Fasting provides a time to back away from the excesses in order to pray. And in that backing away and in that praying, we often rediscover a healthier pathway for everyday life. And I think that's true to my experience. I've got a new visual on food. So I feel like I can get those feelings in my tummy. Oh, I'm really hungry. I've woken up and it's now 10 o'clock and I've been up since 6 a.m. and I haven't had any food yet. But I know I'm not going to die. Nothing bad's going to happen. I'm actually going to be all right. And it's okay for me. And I kind of, when I get those feelings now in my tummy, I go, oh, hello, God. It kind of like reminds me.
Welcome back to Filthy Hope. On this podcast, we spend time in the grey spaces where Jesus, life and culture intersect. If it's your first time here for whatever reason, welcome. I'm your host, Pastor Jonty, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rev Ness.
Hi, how you going?
I'm doing all right. I'm feeling nice, and I've just had a hit of sugar. We just had
love that.
Bit of Arvo tea, bit of caramel slice.
Just after we'd recorded Gluttony.
Yeah, we did. We just did an episode of Into the Word on gluttony and then
just smashed it out a piece of chocolate slice. It felt so wrong, didn't it?
Yeah, it was good though.
I felt like we needed carrot sticks and
hummus or something.
Alfalfa.
Yeah.
And a mineral water.
That's Liquid Death, send us more stuff. We finished it all.
Yes.
It was so good. So today we're talking about you're going to take us on a journey through
spiritual practices.
Some spiritual practices because you've had an experience.
Yeah, I have had an experience.
You've been away.
Yep.
You're back. You've got some stuff to share with us. But first, we've got to do Event Central.
Yes, play the music.
So Event Central, if you're new to Event Central and you're like, what the heck is going on? Where's this music come from? Why is it
I love
loud?
the music part.
I love it too. And we actually had, shout out to Will Odrev in our Facebook group. He shared a photo of him walking through the groceries, listening to the podcast, saying that he was rocking out to the Event Central music. So I'm glad other people love it.
It's so cool.
I've actually, it's an instrumental from probably a 4 or 5 track EP that I've been scratching around with for a while, and Will saying love the music really kicked it up under me again to try and finish that. So I've set it on air now, so now it has to happen.
You got to make it happen.
I've just got to track vocals and then get it sent off to get mixed.
Can you do screaming vocals?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
100%.
Because I feel like you could only do screaming vocals with that Event Central track.
Yeah, that's the style.
Yeah, perfect.
Definitely. If you're into bands like Norma Jean and Under Oath, you'll know exactly where it's going with that. So Event Central is an opportunity for one of us to rant and rave about something that's giving us the shits. That's the setup here.
A standard life thing, not even big. It doesn't even to be just a minor irritation.
Yeah. I think the thing I love about these is we just get the opportunity to like blow up about something that's completely like insignificant.
Yeah.
I was tossing and turning about whether to talk about this one this week, but I think I will because we've had, over the last few weeks, more of these. We get comments on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok,
lots of comments.
on YouTube, because people, because of the wonderful thing that is the discovery algorithm, is our content gets shown to all sorts of random people who don't choose to watch our content. And obviously, unapologetically, we talk about
stuff.
Jesus.
Yep.
We're Christians, that's what we talk about. We have guests on that talk about Jesus and related stuff. And so we get some wonderful comments from really well-adjusted individuals. If you're on the Instagram page, you will have seen a handful of weeks ago, I screenshotted a whole bunch of stuff that was being shared on our YouTube page, having a go at us for platforming a female minister.
Oh.
And it went as far as to say, one of the comments was that God is a man and Adam is a man and the world was in order until Eve came along and threw the world into chaos.
Wow.
Did you know this, Vanessa, that you're bringing chaos into the universe?
Well, many would agree with that.
But But we just had one again. I'll see if I can pull it up in time.
That poor individual.
Yeah, I just
I wonder if it's got a wife or a partner.
probably not. But we got shout out to the wonderful Reverend Dr. Karina Kraminski
Love
we
her.
had on episode 114.
Powerhouse.
I want to say. There's a reel that we put up on a bunch of places where she's talking about how having a dog and the practice of looking after a dog taught her all sorts of lessons about mindfulness and how to actually look after the natural world around her just by looking after this one little creature. I thought quite a nice little clip, not particularly controversial.
Beautiful.
And I'm going to quote here, so I do apologise, but at 19Mike88 says, "White old Antifa rich bitch lecturing everyone about nothing." Now, my question is, Antifa being anti-fascist, what about that is an insult? How dare we be anti-fascist?
Is it the fluffy dog?
But and here's the thing, right? These are all dickheads that don't know what they're talking about, that think it's a good idea to just to waste time commenting on a piece of content that they clearly don't like, that I will always respond to because all that means is that more people see it because it drives engagement up.
It's so good. We are so grateful for that person.
I love it because it means
Yeah.
And that previous dude I was talking about that was having a go at us for platforming a female minister, I said, because he was commenting on a bunch of stuff all within the space of about 48 hours. I said, the irony is just by repeatedly commenting on our content, you're providing Ness with a bigger platform to reach more people.
Thank you, brother.
to preach the gospel to. And that's a good thing because you're a Christian, right? So that's a good thing? Question mark? The reason I was kind of reticent to talk about this in Event Central is because I feel like I don't want to get sucked into this bullshit. And by talking about it, I kind of am. But I just think it's kind of funny as well.
What drives those people, do you reckon, Jonty?
I mean, get in contact with us at 19Mike88 over the... Let us know. I'd love to know what your life is like. What happened in your day that I took my daughter to school, I mowed the lawn, I opened
the traffic lights.
I saw a nice, well-educated, polite woman talking on a podcast about the climate
and a dog.
And then I just felt the need to comment. What? I don't understand. Yeah. Get in touch, Mike.
Please.
I'd love to know. Because it is, I genuinely kind of just find it hilarious.
Yeah. Everyone has a bad day.
Yeah.
But they've taken that takes a bit of energy to respond like that.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you
Baffles
just
me.
scroll past and just let it go?
It takes so much more effort to type up a comment.
I know. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank you
much.
from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please comment more.
Yeah, and get
genuinely.
in touch with me as a female minister. Please get in touch with me. I'd love to take you for coffee and we can talk about this more. So reach out, Rev Ness at unitingheartandsoul.org.
We'll report back, see how many emails she gets. Yeah. I think the thing that does actually start to shit me though is that idiots are allowed to have dumb opinions, but it's when that actually translates to real world misogyny and transphobia and homophobia and things like that. That is where I start to get angry. But people leaving comments like that in our socials, I love it.
Yeah.
So funny.
Play the music.
So now I feel like I've ran around in circles and chased my own tail there for a little bit. We can get on to the main segment of today's episode, which really, for the next little while, we'll see how long with this section kind of goes for, is over to you, Ness.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonty. So over the last couple of years, I have been each year taking 3 days out to go and engage with a different spiritual practice. And in 2022, I did the spiritual practice of silence, and I thought that was going to kill me, brother. I've got to go away for 3 days and not talk. And speak to anyone? How am I going to pull that off? Well, that's a whole podcast on its own.
Yep.
It was a stretch, and it was fantastic, and God revealed things in that time. It was absolutely beautiful. Then in 2023, the next one was the spiritual practice of prayer. Super interesting. I wasn't so scared of that one because I was involved in prayer. I know how to pray. And I thought, oh, that's would be great. Let's learn more about that. Well, that just cracked open into a whole new world. Because when you step aside out of the world and out of your normal routine to just be engaged in the spiritual practice, just you and God, it's a real gift to be able to have that time to do that, to step out of life to do that. Then this September, I've just come back from the spiritual practice retreat of fasting. Bum, bum, bum. I didn't want to go. I go kicking and screaming. I say to Carol Ranucci, who runs these, and she's amazing. If you ever want to do a great spiritual retreat, shout out to Soul Life Ministries. They are incredible. And her husband, Reverend Dr. Andrew Ranucci, and Pastor Carol Ranucci prepare this material for the pastors to come on retreat. It's all women.
We've had Andrew on the show before, and we're about to have Carol on as well. So
Yeah.
we'll hear more about their side of it as well very soon. Yeah.
Definitely. They've pastored a church up on the Central Coast for many years, and they're real pioneers. They're terrific.
And two of the nicest people I've ever met.
Oh, just divine people.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go. I had zero motivation to go on this
They're
thing.
lovely people, but I didn't.
I say to her, I say, Carol, I don't bloody want to come on this thing. I really don't want to come. And she says, just give me a credit card, Ness. It'll all be okay. And then I kind of hope that I get COVID and I don't have to go, and I've got some legitimate excuse to not actually turn up. And then on the morning of getting up to go to drive down to Kangaroo Valley, it's not like I'm fasting off food and I'm fasting off technology because Jonty, we're down in Kangaroo Valley, upper Kangaroo Valley. I'm telling you, 3-finger country out there. There is no internet, mate, and no phones, no nothing. That is stressful. That in itself is a fast.
Yep.
To have no connectivity to the rest of the world is like, that does my head in. So I felt like I was fasting off all these things all in one hit. It was like cold turkey, you know. So I had zero motivation to fast because I thought to myself, oh, this is just bullshit. You know, people that go off and do all this super spiritual fasting palaver, what a lot of, whatever. But then I thought to myself, I cannot criticise something that I do know nothing about. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on that thing, I'm going to do this fasting thing, realise it's bullshit, come back and tell everybody it's bullshit. And we'll do a whole episode on how bullshit fasting really is.
And here we are.
And I'm here to tell you it was one of the greatest spiritual experiences I've had. And I would just love to share with you. And I feel really humbled by the experience because it has changed. I feel changed. But just 3 days. And we weren't hungry for 3 days. We just starved for 24 hours. And it's amazing what the body can do and how the body survives for 24 hours. So that's really just going without 2 meals, you know, just without breakfast and lunch. And then we went from dinner to dinner.
Yep.
So a lot of it you're asleep, you know, 8 hours of it you're asleep. So it's not too stressful. But I grappled with, why do I not want to do this? And I had to look deeply as to what was my resistance to fasting. And one of the women read this fantastic quote, made this terrific quote, and she said, "Resistance is the dragon that guards the goal."
I like that.
Isn't that amazing? Resistance is the dragon that guards the goal. And I thought to myself, well, what's the bloody goal? I didn't know what the goal was yet because I hadn't done the fasting before. Most of the women hadn't fasted or had experience in fasting other than Carol, who's actually done like a 3-day fast.
Yeah, wow.
Yep. And I was fearful that I, of course, was going to be hungry, that I was going to be tired, that I was going to be uncomfortable,
Yep.
that I was going to have a lack of concentration and a lack of energy, and that I'd feel anxious. I think they were my deep fears. And I had this deep childlike feeling in myself that was, don't you tell me what to do. It was really juvenile. Don't tell me what to do. I'm not going to eat when I want to eat. You're not going to control what I put in my mouth or not put in my mouth. It was really interesting to get to the bottom of that. And then I thought, if fasting is about drawing us closer to God, I already feel really connected with God. I'm in constant communication with God. And then once I said that, I heard God say to me, Vanessa, you don't know what you don't know. Give it a try. And so when God speaks, I'm not going to go, I think fasting sucks, God. No, I now know in my spiritual journey.
Good idea to listen.
Really, really, number one,
Yeah.
have a good listen and give this thing a crack. And God said to me, I heard God say, and I'm reading from my journal that I've done all these drawings and pictures. He said, hunger for more of me. Let go, I'll do a work in you and I'll show you a new way. And he gave me this image of a basket full of gems, like precious little gems everywhere. And I thought, oh, okay, well, if God's going to give me a image of precious gems, then I'm going to definitely give this a crack, you know. So before we started on the fast, we went into a whole afternoon of understanding more about what fasting is and exploring what it is. And did you know the word fasting is used 75 times in the Bible?
That's more than I would assume.
Yeah, 2/3 in the Old Testament and a third of those words in the New Testament.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. And in Matthew 6, 1-18, he says, not if you fast, but when you fast. So this is something that they were doing a lot. And we know that Jesus fasted, didn't he? 40 days. 40 freaking days, mate. That's how he pulled that off is just extraordinary, you know. And Richard Foster says, we have no more reason to exclude fasting from the teaching of Jesus than we do giving or praying. He seems to make the assumption that people will fast and is given instructions on how to do it properly. So if we're taught about tithing and praying and why don't we do this fasting thing? Is it just a Uniting Church thing? Or are people fasting in the Uniting Church and I don't know about it? Maybe. I know.
Maybe, yeah. It's certainly not something that I have encountered much of at all. Like I think about I did the 40-hour famine.
Yes, I remember
a couple
that
of times
too.
when I was a teenager.
Yeah, how was that for you?
I remember almost fainting playing soccer on the weekend because I hadn't eaten in X number of hours. I was eating those little rye lolly things and drinking water. I remember, age 14 when you're shooting up an extra centimetre every day. And
starving for a loaf of bread.
playing sport over the weekend, I really, really struggled. But it's like, as an adult, kind of aware of much more in terms of what goes on in the wider Uniting Church. I don't know if I've ever come across fasting as a practice. Definitely not one that's like talked about amongst lots of people. Like it's if it is happening, it's happening in the. And maybe this is a affirmation of when it is happening, because we read a handful of times Jesus saying, "Well, if you're going to do it, like." Don't make a big show of it. Make sure that people actually don't know that you're fasting.
Yeah.
Like do it in secret.
Private. Yeah, that's right. I was in school ministry and one of my reverend sisters used to regularly fast.
Yep.
Every Tuesday she would fast. It used to drive me nuts because it meant that I couldn't have a coffee with her on that day. I was so selfish. And then during Lent, she would do these big fasts of meat and of coffee and she would deprive herself of different things in earnest seeking of the Lord. And I'm wishing I had talked to her more about that. I used to probably try and encourage her to break her fast, which is so wrong of me. I feel like, shout out, sister, I'm sorry that I did that. I lured you with my beautiful smelling coffee on your fasting day. That was just mean. Yeah, she's somebody that, regularly used to do that with her husband.
I know, and I listen to fairly regularly Tim Ross on The Basement, and I'm not sure if this is something he still does, but talks about his practice of essentially intermittent fasting, which is he doesn't eat until lunchtime, basically. And, it's a health practice, but it's also he treats that as a spiritual practice.
Does he?
He wakes up at some ungodly hour every morning to pray and have
amazing
time alone with God. And then from memory, he does that then also with his kids when they wake up before school, and then he goes
pray together,
and then goes and starts work and doesn't eat anything until I can't remember what the time
probably
is,
1
but
o'clock.
it's in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And he actually speaks about how often when they do they've now switched it from a morning to an evening live stream, but when they were doing their morning live streams, he would feel initially kind of like he was a little bit lightheaded and needed to eat something to focus. But as he did it more and more, he actually felt that practice of fasting helped him to be more focused and on top of what he was doing and be more present in his work.
This was my experience, Jonty.
Great. Talk to me about it.
I actually thought that I was going to feel flat and empty and unable to focus. And how am I going to focus on God when I'm bloody starving? That was my complaint.
More focused on your next meal.
My tummy grumbling away, right? But I had almost like a hyper focus that came upon me, which was super interesting. And I thought, I'm just going to crack this wide open on this day. So it got to breakfast time and there was no breakfast. And normally on these retreats, Carol whips up the most magnificent food. So there was no food to be had. And can I tell you, this fasting was completely voluntary and people did it in different ways, right? And we all drank drinks, all had drinks. I drank Diet Sprite through the day. I drank water through the day. I drank peppermint tea during the day. And she also provided green juice for the day as well, and bone broth. So there's many different ways that you can do fasting. There's no hard and fast rule, but it's all about just Christian fasting is for spiritual purposes only. This wasn't about a slimmer waistline or for health reasons. This was purely about spiritual connectedness with God. The goal is, it says here, Lynn Babb says in her book on fasting, the goal is to draw near to God in prayer. Motives matter in just about everything that we do, but in fasting, our motives and purposes are obviously vital. When a fast slides towards the goal of losing weight or manipulating God into doing what we want because of our great exercise of discipline, we have lost the heart of Christian fasting. So it got to a point for me in the afternoon, I think it was at about 22 hours, I was really tired. I just lost focus and I wanted to just go to sleep. So for me, if I was doing that I've realised that if I was doing that and I'd lost the focus of being in God's presence, I would then just break the fast then, because the point is just about your spiritual connectedness with God in that time. And I suppose like being with any friend after a big, long day, we'd been praying and learning and studying from 8 o'clock in the morning right through till I started to fade at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I suppose when you spend that long time in close relationship with a very close dear friend, you both do get tired, don't you?
Yeah.
I reckon God was probably tired of me hammering on him too, and I was tired. It was like high voltage communication with God in this period of time. High voltage. So high energy. It felt, I felt really alert and just on point with God. And I was so in love with the feeling it was almost addictive. It was a heightened sense of closeness and connectedness that I don't normally feel in my moments with God, and I feel deeply in those normal moments. But this was something extra. It was something really special, you know.
In that experience
Yeah.
of being in that close proximity with God for that extended like amount of time, and apologies if I'm jumping ahead to something you were going to talk about later, but like, were there any big revelations or moments of like, what were the learnings? What were the
I'll
what
go
were the
there.
outcomes?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not meaning to
no.
jump you around, but that's
it's
where my
good.
burning question is now.
Okay,
like,
so we did all this great learning, and then Carol offered to. We all just dispersed after we did some Bible study on fasting, and we unpacked it a bit more. So we had a deep understanding, and then we were told to go off and write reflection, and just that now was our time with God, one-on-one. She drove us down a four-wheel drive track to this waterhole that she knew about. And she said, anybody that wants to come hop in the back of the four-wheel drive. And there was just 4 of us plus Carol, and everybody else stayed at the home and just spread out. There was kangaroos and cows and sheep, and it was just beautiful in this huge gorge, the Kangaroo Valley Gorge.
Yeah.
It was just a beautiful place to retreat and to starve with your Bible.
Yeah.
And I jumped in the car with Carol and with the other girls, and I'm driving down this track, and all of a sudden I start to feel deep level of anxiety. And I had, I can't go into the bush. I'm not good at going into the bush. I have anxiety. I'm triggered from child abuse with bush. I had some abuse that happened in the bush or in a dark backyard. It was somewhere very remote, and I don't like going into the bush, and I don't like not being in control of where I am. And we're in her car, I wasn't in my car, and I felt really anxious. My anxiety started to go off the radar, and I just examined. I sort of did a really cool thing. I kind of looked into the anxiety and I did something new. I just called it out to myself and just kind of articulated and said to God, I'm really anxious. I'm in the bush. I can't get out. And God just said, I am with you. And it was so rivetingly, the Spirit was so with me. I am with you. It wasn't, I almost, it felt this close to my face. If I put my hand right up against my face, like I felt like the Spirit was right there with me, like it was almost enveloping me. That's a word I use in my prayer, enveloping me. It was so bizarre. And then I took some big, deep breaths, and none of the girls knew that I was having this crisis. And it's quite boring to talk about it, and I didn't want to launch into any of that crap. I thought I'm going to manage it. And it passed. And then Carol just said, come down here, and she led our way. And it opened up into this most magnificent waterfall that falls over the road and then over this rock escarpment into this massive water hole that people swim in. And there was nobody there. And it's on a dirt road, and then you've got the cliffs of the Kangaroo Valley, and you could hear the birds, and you know those ones that go, you know those ones, that whip sound, and they were just talking to each other, and there was the sound of the water that was quite a big sound, bubbling sound, and I just found myself mesmerised by the beauty of creation all around me. I got lost in the awe of creation. And I remembered what I'd learned at uni a semester or so ago, Ramon Panikkar saying that you can find the divine in everything. So I looked everywhere. Did I sound like him then?
I don't know what he sounds like. In my head, he's going to sound like you now.
Yeah. So I started to see the divine in everything I was looking at. So am I sounding like I'm on drugs?
No.
Because I feel like this is what somebody who's high feels like. But this is how it felt. It was really, really, I felt it was like pure clarity, like clear as anything. And so I found this rock and I sat down on the rock and I was enveloped by the water. I found a rock big enough that I wouldn't get wet. I just sat down on it with my journal and a bag full of colouring in pencils and my thermos of peppermint tea, and I just sat my ass on the rock and I could feel and hear God all around me. And then as I'm sitting there, I'm starting to pray, and this big rush of wind out of nowhere just ripped right through the canyon, lifted my hat off my head, and I just like did one of those, quickly grabbed it and shoved it back down. And I just felt the presence of the Holy Spirit arrive in the canyon in that moment. And it was so superb, Jonty. It was superb. And I'm getting hungry by this stage. It's now 11:30 around that time, and it's coming on to lunchtime. And I was starting to be really hungry. And I thought, I'm just going to examine what that feels like, and God said this to me: there is a harvest that is yet to be seen. Harvest yet to be seen. I don't use language like that. I've written it in here, a harvest yet to be seen. I wonder what that harvest is that's yet to be seen. So I thought I'll just engage in the conversation with God. And the way that I talk to God is that I just talk like a conversation. I don't use fancy language. I just talk like I talk now, lovingly to somebody that I deeply love, And as I started to pray, I don't know. I know I was there for about 3 hours. And so all of this happened in this 3-hour period while I sat on the rock. And I started to write after I'd had a big conversation with God. Can I read it?
Please, yeah.
I said, Lord, as I sit in the middle of your streams of life-giving water, I hunger no more. My desire for honey toast has left me, and I am surrounded with all that you have to offer me. I am enveloped by your love and source for my soul. I can rest at peace in the beauty of the creation all around me. I am nowhere that is familiar, nowhere that I know or recognize, but I recognize you and I feel safe. I can hear your voice of love in the water and the birds, and it fills my soul. I no longer thirst for cappuccino or desire for a patisserie to fill my emptiness. I'm being filled up by you. I sit in awe of this gift. It's like an embrace that feels manageable and safe. It's an embrace that I like, because I'm not into embracing, Jonty. I don't like a hug. I'm not into that physical touch thing. Irks me. Creation bubbles along the songs of the birds to each other, and you echo in my ear of a place of rest and release. This feeling is new for me until I feel the wind of the Holy Spirit randomly ripping through this canyon. Grateful, unexpected emotions wash over me with your love and delight. There is an ease and effortlessness. The motion of the water surrounding me gives me peace. I thought I would yearn for a picnic, but I only yearn for you, God. Oh, and the Holy Spirit, your reminder of your presence with us today, swirling around this page, lifting my hat from my head. One word, divine. Take pleasure in me. I have enough for you, Vanessa. It's mine to share. Take and consume more of me. Fill yourself to overflowing so you can pour out more on others. So I ended that prayer in one word, divine, and then God said that last piece to me. Take pleasure in me. I have enough for you, Vanessa. It's mine to share. Take and consume more of me. Fill yourself to overflowing so you can pour out on others. Whoa. It was just so incredible. I went on to say that God said, teach them of my desire for them to know more of me. Model the unexpected for them to see me and you. Well, that was just a little bit heavy, but so powerful. It was just, he said a whole lot of stuff to me as well that I won't share, but he says a whole bunch of stuff and then he says, I'm not done with you. Well, ain't that a lucky thing? It was just so illuminating, you know, this sense of connectedness and peace and regulation, like emotional regulation. That's not something that I'm regularly feeling in my everyday life, you know. It was palpable, you know. And in one of the studies we did, it talks about fasting revealing our greatest hunger. And I think one of my greatest hungers is for peace and no anxiety. It's one of my greatest hungers, and for a closeness with God. 1 Corinthians 6:12-20 says, the Apostle Paul said, I will not be mastered by anything. Fasting reveals the measure of food mastery over us, or television or computers or whatever we submit to again and again to conceal the weakness of our hunger for God. John Piper said that, not the Apostle Paul. Yeah. So we can totally get hooked in, can't we, and mastered by many, many things, whether it be food or technology or our phones or Netflix or whatever it is. We need to take time out and fast from stuff. So I had the benefit of not only fasting from food, but also fasting from the technology. So I couldn't even Google, hey Siri, where do I find the passage on when Jesus says, I had to be doing it all myself. And funnily enough, I find it all by myself. I'm just too lazy and use Siri. Do you do that?
If I don't have access to my phone on hand.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's just makes essay writing very quick too.
I wonder, because like there's obviously, and we're talking about, and first of all, thank you for sharing all that stuff from your journal. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for being so open with that. That's a real gift for people to hear, I think.
Yeah, it was felt like it was a gift. God gave me a gift. I felt like I can't not share that. Well, God actually told me to share it. So that's why when I rang you, I said, can we please do one on fasting? Yeah. I feel like when God says for me to do something, I need to do it. Yeah.
I guess my question being like, we don't always, it's fairly irregular that if at all we're able to dedicate a day.
Yeah.
Or like a weekend.
Totally.
So for you, do you have a sense of like the really positive things that you learnt in terms of your own spiritual practice, not specifically just with fasting, but in general, fasting being the thing that, like you said, you'd done prayer and silence as well. I imagine, and this is probably something that you're still processing as well, so I apologize, it's a very specific question, but like how has that translated, or are you still working in translating that into like your day-to-day spiritual practice? Because it's not something, we're not able to not eat.
No.
Like we do have to eat.
Yeah, we do.
So fasting isn't like oh great, that worked for 12 hours, so I'm going to do that 24 hours because you'll die because you need to eat food.
Yeah,
but like how has that practice kind of metastasized, like turned into something beautiful of a practice that you can continue?
So I think that I did a whole lot of other work also understanding what was my reticence to wanting to fast. If Jesus did fasting and it's all scattered throughout the Bible, you know, really powerful people in the Bible fasted, Jonty. I've got a list of them here. Let me just quickly find it for you because it's the who's who in the Bible. So Moses, King David, Elijah.
Well, and because it's
Esther.
all baked into Jewish tradition as well,
Definitely.
right? Yeah.
Daniel, Anna the prophetess, Paul the apostle, Jesus Christ. So many of them fasted and talked. So if Jesus is talking about fasting, then he tells us to pray and we're to give. And there's a whole bunch of things that Jesus models. Why wouldn't we model fasting? Because it's bloody hard. That's why. It's really hard to fast. But I said to God, so what's my takeaway?
Yeah.
Okay, 3 days. I'm privileged to be able to have somebody guide me through this for a start with a group of novice fasters, all other spiritual pastors in churches, women. So we did it together. So we did it as a community. There was power in doing it with other women. That was magnificent. I think that definitely made it, there was a camaraderie in that, doing it together. Because we're all feeling the feelings together, on different journeys, but feeling the same physiological sensation. Some of us more than others, And I said on the last day, I said to God, so what now? What am I going to do with this? And God, clear as day, said to me, and I had breakfast, so you're still talking to me, schedule it in. And it's not what I kind of wanted to hear. Schedule it in. Are you sure? How often should I schedule it in? Just do it. So I got my diary and I sat down and I tried to think about how will I build this into my life so that it can be something manageable that I can do. And I had a look at my diary and then working in when I go to the gym and when I do Pilates and when I exercise, because on those days you do need some more calories. Probably don't have got enough body fat that'll last me weeks, but I don't want to feel flat and I don't want to be dragging my feet around when doing work and being with people. I don't want to be feeling those feelings. So I thought I can do it I have a Friday off is my like my Saturday.
Yeah.
And so I could fast from Thursday night until 1 or 2 o'clock on Saturday. I reckon I could do that. I reckon I could definitely pull that off. And it's a time that I'm not required to be with anybody.
Yeah.
I don't have to be with Rob. I don't have to be the life of the party. I don't have to hold conversation with anybody or do anything really. Just sort of life admin on that day, And really that's when I do take time out to go and sit by the beach or sit by Pittwater, and I usually have a coffee and a sandwich and I just pray and do my thing. But I can actually do that with no food, and I'm just going to use that, and I'm going to give it a crack and have a go at it, say once a month, see what I can do, pull off a couple of hours in that time, and just see how focused I can be and how I can hunger more for God in that way. It says fasting helps us address life's excesses, and we live in a world that's full of it, don't we, Jonty?
Yeah.
It's like full on. And Lynn Barb says in her book on fasting provides a time to back away from the excesses in order to pray. And in that backing away and in that praying, we often rediscover a healthier pathway for everyday life. And I think that's true to my experience. I've got a new visual on food. So I feel like I can get those feelings in my tummy. Oh, I'm really hungry. I've woken up and it's now 10 o'clock and I've been up since 6 a.m. and I haven't had any food yet. But I know I'm not going to die. Nothing bad's going to happen. I'm actually going to be all right. And it's okay for me. And I when I get those feelings now in my tummy, I go, oh, hello, God. It kind of like reminds me. This is a practice that Muslims do a lot.
Yeah.
And Jews do a lot.
Yep.
I mean, what happened to the Christians? The practice in Ramadan is they fast.
Yeah.
We had girls at school coming in and fasting that were Muslim girls. They had to continue doing school all day with just water.
Yeah.
and not until but then they, you know what they then do is go home and feast.
Yeah.
They do big feasting of an evening, you know. That's certainly not addressing life's excess, but I would imagine they fast because it draws them closer to God, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The thought that's kind of forming for me is, and for me at the moment, it's very much the thing that is coming to mind for me in my own personal reflection on this is the presence of social media and technology, and the way that seems to, and we've, in fact, behind your head, there's a book there called Stolen Focus, which we'll probably come back to at some point in a later episode as well, about how the presence of social media and technology in our pockets has done a lot to break people's long-term ability to focus.
Yep.
I've certainly, in the last year, it's almost ironic that like the more I know about it, the more aware of it I am, and the more that I feel like it affects me.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I feel like I have to really fight to continue to work my muscle of focusing on things.
Yeah, right.
Even down to, I'm not just talking about work or creative pursuits, but I'm talking spiritually. I'm talking prayer. I'm talking sitting down for long enough to read my Bible for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so for me, just and I'm sure that there are people that'll feel the same listening to this or watching this. Maybe a really useful practice of fasting could actually be like disconnecting from the internet.
Totally.
For a day, even.
Yes.
Even 6 hours.
Yeah, amazing.
Like just switch it all off.
On your day off.
I was just on a time recording. We record on Tuesdays. The weekend just gone.
Yeah.
I went 4-wheel driving with 3 of my best mates.
Out of zone, out of range?
Out of range
Yeah.
for a weekend.
Amazing.
And it's just, and you're also out of Sydney. You're in the fresh air. You're in the bush. Similar to you, actually. It's interesting to hear you talk about like feeling anxious about going into the bush. I also have, I don't know where it comes from, but there's that initial like, oh, leaving civilization.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I don't like to be out of contact.
yeah, that might
that
be it.
for
Yeah.
me.
But once I'm out there,
You're free.
it's
yes.
just like you can breathe. There's no weight on your shoulder. Like everything about it is amazing. And then as soon as you start coming back down the mountains, your phone starts pinging again.
Yeah.
And it's like that weight just
Yeah.
shifts straight back onto your shoulders.
Yep.
So just, and like I said, I'm sure there'll be people listening and watching that feel the same. Maybe a practice of fasting that isn't necessarily the food side of it could be
Definitely.
social media,
Technology.
technology,
Just turn your
emails.
phone off.
Just turn your phone off.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I've even started, and this is I'm sure there's research on this, and after we finish recording, I'm going to go find it, see if I can find anything. I don't have my phone in my pocket when we're recording this.
Right.
I've thought that my phone has buzzed in my pocket at least 3 times while we've been recording.
And it's not.
And my phone isn't even in my pocket.
Oh, there's a biofeedback.
Yeah, yeah.
How interesting.
Like, and that's a real sign to me that like, hey,
There's
time
a problem.
to something needs to happen with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting on this retreat. So we had no phone connectivity, and it was about 7 minutes from any phone connectivity driving at 60 Ks.
Yeah.
It's a long way from phone connectivity, really, right?
Yeah.
And so I this is the 3rd time I've been at this location, so I knew what to expect. But the first time I nearly lost my shit in a panic attack, anxiousness. It was really rough for me. And this time I knew I go kicking and screaming to these things because I kind of don't want to surrender to it. Do you know what I mean?
Control?
Yes. Yeah. But and I think then I realise how I'm being controlled by my phone. There's nobody that needs me. My family are grown up and they're safe, and Rob's there, and church all know that I'm off for 3 days doing this thing, and nothing bad can happen. Yet for some reason I'm in some state of panic about this. And you know what? There's something quite calming I've realised about scrolling through news and news articles. It kind of helps my anxiety. I didn't have that at night to do. It was, but you know what? I had God. It was so interesting. I just replaced food and technology God. Mate, I'm so bloody spiritual. Look at me go. It was deep learning, deep learning, and I wished I'd had an understanding of this earlier in my Christian journey. I think that could have really informed me, and I'm very grateful God spoke to me, and I have a close connection with God, but I've found a conduit to a deeper, tighter connection with God that's, it was really powerful. I'm really keen to give it another crack and see how it feels for me, you know. It says here in The Cost of Discipleship, which is a book, Jesus takes it for granted that his disciples will observe the pious custom of fasting. Strict exercise of self-control is an essential feature of the Christian life. Such customs have only one purpose: to make the disciples more ready and cheerful to accomplish those things which God would have done.
Yeah.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Love a bit of Bonhoeffer.
Yeah.
We today finished recording an episode of Into the Word about gluttony.
Yeah, that
And
was good, wasn't
fasting was the corresponding spiritual practice that that it has as the way to exercise self-control and in combating gluttony. And I guess we've identified for us in a fasting of food and a fasting of technology and social media. Those are some things that require self-control over and are vulnerable to gluttony and you can fast. But I guess there are so many other things. People listening will probably have something in their heads right now that you are prone to gluttony with, to greed, to overindulgence, that exerting self-control over something is a challenge. And so I guess I want to open this up to this spiritual practice of fasting is actually about combating some of those things that are getting in the way of you engaging with God. Yeah. So whatever 100%. It is.
Yeah.
Is it booze? Is it social media? Is it online shopping?
Right.
Is it food? There's so many different things.
Yes.
And so...
Is it exercise?
Yeah.
Too much exercise.
100%.
Yeah. It was really interesting because we were all breaking habits, right? And all the women there were pretty fit chicks who like to go to the gym or exercise, and all of us had this routine completely thrown into shambles. No gym, all our normal things that we would normally do in a day, or nothing there. It was super interesting to remove yourself from those things that we
take for granted almost.
And we're addicted to.
Yeah, right.
And exercise could be one of those things.
Yeah.
Because we often take the very purest, beautiful things and ruin them, don't we? People can over-exercise.
Yeah, there's a adage or saying that your greatest weakness is often your greatest strength taken to it, like too much of an extreme.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It says that fasting helps us on a journey of transformation. And I can say, as I'm just wrapping this up now, that it was very transformative for me. I feel like it's something that drew me closer to God. I know that it's achievable. I know that I'm not going to die. It's all going to be okay, and something beautiful will happen in that time if I stop, be still, and just focus on talking to God. Something beautiful will happen. God will turn up, And it says this in Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So I'm embracing fasting. I've decided it's something that I'm going to embrace. I'm going to try it on again. And it was interesting, when we first started the conversation on this retreat about fasting, I had a deep thought about feasting. And one of the deeply spiritual times of the year that I really love that's around a feast is our Maundy Thursday meal that we run at Uniting Heart and Soul. We have the beautiful lamb and we do big pita bread and we do almonds and dates, and it's tzatziki and tabbouleh, and it's very simple Last Supper meal that we provide. And
this is, for people that may not know, the Thursday before Easter.
Yeah, the Thursday before the Good Friday.
Yep.
And we talk about this Last Supper and we do a communion and we just focus, and it heightens our awareness ready for the Easter experience. And you know what? I can draw a similarity to that feasting that we do on that Maundy Thursday night to the fasting feeling and the deep spiritual connectedness I got in the fasting. So feasting and fasting, I think it was really interesting. There was a similar sense of feeling there for me.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it was. It was really, really very interesting. So I just think it'd be worth giving it a crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be keen to hear from our listeners if there's anyone that has also
Me too.
fasted.
Yeah.
Like, is that something that you do? Let us know. What's it
Yeah.
like? Why do you do it? What's the experience like? What are the results? Like,
Yeah.
what does it bring up for you? Like,
Yeah, that's right.
I'd be really keen to know if we have
for
people
sure. Yeah.
that practice fasting.
Yeah, that's right. I unpacked. I wanted to know if any of this fasting stuff had linked in with any child abuse or anything like that, and I didn't find anything there, which was really good for me to have that affirmation. But what I did realise was in my home as a child, Dad was an artist, so there was time of and Mum was studying. She went back to uni and studied law and psychology, and in that time when it was just Dad earning money, it felt like a feast or famine type of financial situation in the home.
Right.
There was either lots of money or Mum and Dad had to penny pinch for a period until Dad's next check came in. Dad sold a painting and there was money again in the bank. So I felt like it was a feast and famine time, and I talked about that with God because I wanted to kind of unpack that sense. And I think as a kid, I remember saying to Mum and Dad, I want to buy a Jupiter bar. These were these bars, like I suppose like the muesli bar of today. It was like caramel, ridiculous sugar thing, caramel peanutty thing, 15 cents. They didn't have 15 cents for a Jupiter bar. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be hungry morning tea because I'm not going to have a Jupiter bar. And I wonder if that created in me an urgency about never being hungry. And I do remember sort of saying to myself as a teenager, or at some point, like 11 or 12 years old, I will never have this experience ever again. I won't have this experience. I will make sure this doesn't ever happen. And so therefore I've gone about to make a life of abundance for my family and for my kids, so that there will always be almost too much of everything, because I don't want them to have that, no, you can't have 15 cents. I don't have 15 cents for a Jupiter bar. But other times there would have been times when they said, yeah, have 15 cents for a Jupiter bar, and do you want a Sunny Boy ice block thing as well? There's another 10 cents. And do you want a packet of chips? So it was like feast or famine in the home. Probably not such great management of money, maybe. I must talk to them about that. But that's how my childhood brain has perceived that anyway. And I've made a decision that I'm not going to live like that. So I've overcompensated in all things of abundance, I think.
And there's like, I imagine an element of in setting up all these ways of controlling that to make sure that doesn't happen, to then hand over that control back over to God.
Yes.
To fast. Must be a pretty big deal.
Big deal. It was a really big deal.
Yeah.
You know, but unpacking that and asking myself about that and sitting in the quietness of just God's company to have these conversations and And then in my own psychology to think it through, it was really illuminating. And to go, okay, do I need to hold that anymore? I don't really need to do that anymore. That's not relevant anymore. 57, it's all under control. Got plenty to eat at any point. It's okay.
Yeah.
It was great. It was just, I'm so grateful. Yeah. So big tick to fasting, Jonty.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
I think we might need to do prayer and silence another day.
Yeah. Let's
that
keep them up our sleeve.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you reckon about that?
About the fasting stuff?
The convo.
I really, because I had tossed and turned it. I've done it a couple of times, kind of unintentionally, the intermittent thing about not eating until like a late lunch.
Yep.
Where I'll just like forget or not be hungry to eat breakfast and get to lunchtime and I'm kind of hungry. But I thought about that as something I could, initiate for myself anyway. And so in having this conversation, that's put that back on the brain. So I might give that a go.
Do you know what we should do? We should do it together. Pick a day and we could do it together and we could check in with each other. How are you going? It's 11 o'clock. How are you feeling? Hungry? Yeah. Let's pray. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We could do that.
Yeah.
Just buddy fasters together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Ask them if you want to do that, let us know. Put in the chat.
Yeah. Come chat to us in the Facebook group.
Yeah, we could do it all together.
Yeah.
We could pick a day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be a cracker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cheap date.
Oh, yeah, so interact with us in the Facebook group. If we do some of that fasting stuff, that's where that'll be happening. If you're not on there, link down below, come and join us. There's a bunch of other Filthy Hope listeners in there that we hang out with and chat with, and you get early access to things along the way as well, whether they're links to live events or moving forward, we'll hopefully start to have some goodies that you guys can buy in terms of ways of supporting us in the ministry that we do here. So things like T-shirts and notebooks and things like that.
Cool
in the Facebook group, we'll have first access to those things as well. Speaking of which, if you do want to support what we do here, you can, at the church website down below, you can give financially if you want. But the easiest way is just to, if you're watching us on YouTube, give it a like, give it a subscribe, or
love that.
Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, please, can they do that?
It makes a massive difference.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a gift if they do that for us.
Yeah, takes one click to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you want to be even more generous, spend a couple minutes typing up a couple of nice words. It makes a massive difference.
And if you want to say nasty things, do that anyway because it boosts the algorithm anyway.
What's his name?
Go back
Mike?
to the Vent Central. Look at us go full circle.
Yeah.
Hey, big shout out to the Renucci's and Soul Life Ministries. We'll put their details below.
Yes.
If you're interested in any of the spiritual practices that I've talked about and doing retreats, they are second to none, that group. Amazing for men and for women.
Yeah, and keep an eye out. Very soon, I think in our schedule, we'll have an episode with Carol coming out.
Yeah, she's
we'll
a gem.
unpack some of this stuff and go back to episode 98 or 99, I want to say, with Andrew as well.
Yeah, he was a good interview.
And Andrew and I had a chat about spiritual practices. So,
amazing.
Feel free to go back and check those out if you missed them at the time. Come join us tomorrow for Into the Word. If you're a listener over there, we're getting back into a new season about vices in correspondence to the season we just did before about fruits of the Spirit and virtues.
Amazing.
We're having a good time recording those on Wednesdays. If you're watching us on YouTube, right here on the YouTube channel. If not, if you're listening, it has its own podcast feed, but it's all linked down below. If not, we'll see you back here next week for more Filthy Hope on a Tuesday.
Looking forward to it.
We'll talk to you then, Ness.
Yeah, can't wait.
Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you then.